The BSides NoVA 2020 stream will begin momentarily.
They got. This is useful. I use this all the time when I'm teaching. I was 2 days ago, I was in West Virginia talking about OPSEC and kind of a force protection, speaking there. And I love this site because this is the site that I always use to kind of hammer home, you need to be using different passwords on these sites, right? Every single site, you need to be using different passwords. And so you see there, like, okay, some Black Hat World in 2014 that I had an account on got popped, some Bitcoin forum in 2015 I had an account got popped. Big deal. Well, the big deal is if that's the same password or a very, very close variant of the same thing I use on my Gmail or my online banking or something more sensitive like people do, right? People think they're being creative. It is hilarious for me to stand up in front of a room this size and talk about like, okay, if I tell you your password needs to be at least 9 characters, how long is it? Everyone goes 9. If I tell you it needs an uppercase, where does it go? The front. If I tell you it needs special character number, the back. It is. People are predictable, so we don't want to reuse the same passwords. I love this as a teaching opportunity. But for what we're going to talk about in here, there are lots of different people that do OSINT for a lot of different reasons, right? Threat intelligence, law enforcement investigations, I don't care what it is, there's lots of different reasons. But probably the most common problem for most people that do OSINT is identity resolution, right? Everyone who's done this for more than about a week will have run into this problem. You have a phone number, you have an email address, you have a username, and you're trying to find out who does this belong to, or you're trying to find out more information about the person that this belongs to. That is steady state. Like I said, you do this all the time in kind of investigations, even in threat intelligence, right? Corporations all the time. I saw like 2 months ago, someone from like what looked like an anonymous Gmail account just emailing in, hey, we found a vulnerability on your site, go ahead and pay me, otherwise I'm gonna do some other stuff with it. And now it's like, obviously you wanna find out more information about that person and everything you can to try to figure it out. So there's lots of different reasons that people do this style of work, but the need is pretty universal to take some selector, like I said, once again, an email, a phone number, a username, and convert that into more information about the individual, that identity resolution. And so with that in mind, you take one more look now at the slides from Have I Been Pwned and you realize, well shoot, okay, some Black Hat World SEO forum I was on in 2014 got popped, big deal. But if this was our target, right, if it wasn't me, if this was our target, date of birth, email address, instant messenger identities, IP address, password, username, website activity. If I can take that email address and convert that into username, you know, maybe other instant messenger accounts, IP addresses, and obviously those are incredibly dynamic, but at least maybe I can then narrow it down to a region somewhere in the world. This is a lot of useful information that can help me solve that identity resolution problem. And so with that in mind, if you're thinking like, all right, this seems interesting, how do I get started doing this? That's what we're going to talk about starting right now. How do we find it? The first thing is just Google it. Like seriously, kind of kidding, kind of not. I actually had to update this slide 2 days ago because the original link was to a shady.ru site that for some reason went down in the past 2 weeks, so go figure. So yeah, the darknetleaks.ru, RIP, maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. But the whole purpose of the original slide that I have of this, until I modified it 2 days ago, is when you go to that site and you look at all the different breach data lists they have down there, we have the file names, right? So now we can take that file name and now we can search on that. And so I just grabbed the first one there, Avast 2014 400K, great. But now you Google that file name, we found 127 other results in Google, or maybe now we can go find that file. And so now that the darknetleaks.ru is down, I actually had to switch over to that other site that you see right there, deepwebsites.org. That was one of the sites that I was able to pivot to from Googling the file name. Once again, now this is kind of cool. I went to that site, deepwebsites.org, 2 days ago. It had probably like 30 breach data sets there. And then it had a list of other breach data sets that were available on this other site. I tried to click on that other site, the site was down, no longer good. Not a big deal because we have our old friend archive.org, right? Archive.org is an effing vacuum cleaner. Whereas like Google Cache loads up kind of like the blank shell of a web page and then wants to go grab all the resources from the live site, archive.org tries to grab everything itself. There are binaries that have not existed on the internet for a decade that are still sitting there on archive.org. Very, very specific data sets. I helped a friend of mine once find a file that really only existed for a week, and it was a legal reason the company had to pull it back, but he went back to their website that specific week, grabbed the executable. I had a student one time ask me, how do I get a copy of Poison Ivy? I'm like, go behind any truck stop, like that should do it. Like, oh, you mean the malware, my bad. That site's been down for like a decade, but we can go to archive.org and grab a copy of it. So all of these data sets are still on there as well. When you start doing these things, when you start going to these shady places, use some form of protection. Like, I don't care what you use. This isn't a talk on the OPSEC. I don't have the time to it. But if you want to use like VPNs, or you want to use Tor tails, you want to use VMs, whatever it is, but use something, right? You probably should at least give it some type of conscious thought. If your paranoia level is super low and you just want to YOLO it and open it up like one tab away from your online banking and email, God bless you. You do you. You live your best life. No judgment here. Distributed denial of secrets, right? This is kind of like WikiLeaks, like slightly classier cousin, right? Like slightly classier, like they're still from Florida, but they don't use meth yet. And so you look and they're sitting there leaking all this information right and left. And there it says, hey, we got copies of the servers from some bank in the Caymans where a lot of shady Russians were doing money laundering. You're like, damn, that sounds kind of fun. I wonder what they mean by copies of the servers. When they say copies of the servers, they mean copies of the servers. Domain controller, Exchange server, SQL database, like everything right there. Massive, massive data files that are all there for the taking. We're actually going to see this screenshot one more time at the very, very end of the presentation when we're talking about some digital forensics stuff. Twitter searches, right? I'm sure like a majority of people in this room at some point went and downloaded something from Mega Upload back in the day, right? For reasons. Well, Kim.com was very resilient, so that got taken down, but now we have Mega NZ, right? It's kind of back in the fold. Mega NZ is a very, very popular place for people to upload breach data sets. There's a lot of other shady places where people do it, but they are a pain in the butt for people to download it. And so it's kind of funny when you're kind of hanging out in that community, if someone posts the data somewhere else that's really kind of annoying people, they'll actually get yelled at like, dude, just post it on Mega. All right, just please go post it on Mega. There's a very, very strong draw for that. And so the same way, like most people are familiar with Google dorking. Well, we can use Google dorking now to look for certain keywords we're looking for in anything from Mega NZ. Or here, right, not Google dorking, but here we're Twitter dorking. So I'm just doing a search for mega.nz and the word link. And now we found 1.5 million users' Facebook data, 106 meg file that's just sitting out there hosted on Mega. So like I said, it's a very, very popular Google dork, Twitter dork, wherever it is you want to search to find some of this breach data. Torrents. Torrents are fantastic if you can use them, right? They're not just for pay-per-view movies or other things. Some of these data sets are massive. Collection 1 is not the biggest data set out there, but still you see the collection 1 link compressed up is still over 36 gigs in size. Downloading that from like some shoddy shared host or some .onion or something else, you're gonna have a bad time. Like you're not gonna be enjoying life. So anytime you can, torrents are fantastic for some of these large data sets. I think there's one out there for collections 2 through 5. And through another dump called the anti-public that's over 100 gigs in size. So if you're going to be downloading that, you definitely want to do it from a torrent. It's always worth checking these sites like Pirate Bay or things for what you're looking for. Raid forums. I love raid forums. There are a lot of forums out there where people kind of trade this stuff. People try to buy and sell it. Raid forums is probably the most popular one. They have a ton of different links on there. You can just see a small section of it there. And there are ways you can earn credits, but usually the most common way is people just kind of buy them. And then anytime you want to unlock something, it's 8 credits. And it works out to it's about like a little over $2. It's between $2 and $3 to unlock a data set. And a lot of people absolutely hate this. They're like, nope, I refuse to spend any money. I'm supporting the ecosystem. Like, I totally get that, right? In this talk, I'm not trying to play morality police. Everyone that knows me knows I'm not morality police. I would be the worst morality police ever. Like, I wouldn't enforce anything, just you do whatever it is you want to do. But like I said, they have hundreds and hundreds of breach data sets here that you can grab for between $2 to $3 worth of credit if you were so inclined. They also have forums where people will talk, people will trade, people will post things that they want to buy or that they want to sell. And the forums are a good time. Even if you don't want the data, the forums are a damn good time. A lot of times when people post things, it's pretty clear what they're trying to do, right? Like, I want telecom data for Spain, right? Or I'm looking for banking information from like Qatar or the UAE or something. Okay, fine. But sometimes people post some wild stuff, man. There was something about a month and a half ago, someone posted, I'm looking for people in the US that have committed white-collar crimes, along with a list of where they served their time and what the crime was. And what's for lunch? Like, damn, that's awesome. I kind of wanted to reach out like, listen, I do not have the data that you're looking for, but it sounds like you got some Ocean's 11 shit going on, and I'm going to be honest with you, I want in. Like, whatever it is you got going on here, I want in on some of this. So yeah, like I said, even if you don't want data, the forums can be a really, really good time sometimes. There was something wild posted there just the other day. There are sites that just flat out sell the data, right? Just right there. And let me tell you right now, if you think you're going to find a better price on 2 million Russian bank accounts, go out there and pound it, right? And it's kind of funny is a lot of times they try to package it up as leads. Yeah, just lead generation. Here you go. I'm just a legitimate business selling leads. And when I first saw that, I really kind of started laughing like, that's ridiculous. And you're like, damn, it's actually not far off. Like, it's really not, right? Isn't the difference between leads and stuff like this just basically if you stole the data or you paid for it legitimately? Other than that, the end data, it's like, damn, yeah, it's really kind of sad when you think about it. But you can see there from all over the world, banks, Forex, cryptocurrency, casinos, whatever it is, the data sets are out there. There's just too many of them to list. So now that we talked about places where maybe you want to go find some, maybe you could go find some, once you find them, you start downloading them, they add up very, very quickly. You know, thankfully, storage is cheap. Like an 8 terabyte hard drive now is like $150 for a good one. They're not that much money. And then it just becomes a matter of, like I said, the whole title of the talk, weaponizing the deep web. What I mean by weaponizing is how do we actually take that data and make it usable? There's a couple different ways to do it. We'll talk about the easy way right here. First thing you do when you want to ground some data and download it, you want to take a quick peek at the data to see how it's organized, right? And people that use Linux are very, very familiar with the term cat. These data sets are huge. They're absolutely huge. And so you're not going to be able to open it in Excel. You're not going to be able to open it in Notepad or Notepad++ or the traditional ways that you would do things. The easiest way to look at this is usually from a command line. And so people that know Linux, like in this group, they know, yeah, I can just type cat and content and copies of the file, everything just there goes pouring out to the screen. But what a lot of people don't know, a lot of people that use Windows, they don't know Windows has the same thing, right? Type. And so when you download this data set, you can't open it in Excel, you can't open it in Notepad++, they're usually too big. So we'll take it, go to the command line, type the contents of the file, and it just starts pouring down to the screen. We can see kind of how the data is formatted. Now, I remember one time I got a big breach data set. A buddy of mine working for a defense contractor, I let him know, he's like, hey, are any of our emails in there? I'm like, well, what do your emails look like? He told me, great, no problem. So now, we modify that command slightly differently. So once again, those who use Linux, they're familiar with cat and grep, right? We cat the contents of the file, we grep it, -i for case and sensitivity, we don't care for our keyword. But for Windows, pretty much everyone that uses Windows, everyone's like, damn, you know, like Windows has the equivalent of grep. It does, and most people do not know that. So once again, now we're typing the file name to take all the output and pour it out to the screen, but now we're piping that. Find string is like the Windows version of grep, -i for case and sensitivity, and now our keyword. And so right there, instead of just dumping the entire MyFitnessPal data breach to the screen, I'm piping it to find string -i laquinta.com, and now I'm only seeing results that have laquinta.com, right? And for those of you that don't habla español, La Quinta is Spanish for next to Denny's. If you want to take this now, like this is the MGM resorts, right? You heard of like the MGM data breach that was hot off the press like a week and a half ago. So this is that. So I was working with one organization that's like, listen, we got like 8 domains and we want to see if any of our emails are in there. That's not a problem. That's only going to take me like 10 minutes top, right? Because once again, I can cat the file name, grep it, and now I can redirect the output instead of to the screen to just some file. So I could do domain1.txt, then I could do domain2.txt, and I could do the same thing on Windows. It took me like 10 minutes to fit that need. There you go, and you have your whole list of all the emails that were in there for your different domains. Not a big deal, super, super easy to perform. One thing I was just talking about this morning actually that I've been trying to do a better job of is I feel like an idiot like 99% of the time, I truly do, but I forget that I've been doing this style of work for like over a decade now. And so sometimes there's certain things that I just kind of take for granted, and then I'm working with some of my coworkers, they're like, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing ever, right? Something like the type and the fine string. So I'm like, oh yeah, no, I just, I forget that not everyone knows everything. Because like I said, I usually feel like an idiot, but you forget that you just accumulate a lot of knowledge over time. And so one thing is I've done a ton of digital forensics work, and one of my favorite digital forensics tools is a tool called Bulk Extractor. It's completely free, and what Bulk Extractor does is it combines kind of strings and regex. So you stick it on a file. It doesn't matter what the file is. It can be like an executable, it can be a disk image, it can just be a bunch of text files, you can stick it on a directory, it doesn't care. It's going to gobble through that. It's going to extract any text that it can find, and then it's going to look for patterns that says, this looks like an IP address, this looks like an email, this looks like a phone number, right? This looks like a MAC address, this looks like a domain, this looks like a Facebook user ID. It's going to try to suck that out automatically and generate text files for each one of these types of patterns that it finds. It's an amazing digital forensics tool. It's one of my all-time favorites. We can use it in this type of field too, because I guarantee you in a room this size, I am not the only one who at work, usually I'm asked to do things and my deadlines are in minutes, right? Like not days, not weeks, but in minutes that I need to kind of produce results. And so what I'll refer to is just like an absolute smash and grab of selectors. Like it's not perfect, it's not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, but it's just really, really good at sucking out email addresses, phone numbers, IP addresses, and anything else like we have from a data set. So a couple months ago, a data set got out there from a site called Iron March, and this was a place online where a bunch of Nazis hung out. And when I say Nazis, I don't mean like people that disagreed with you on Twitter, so you called them Nazis, but actual like Indiana Jones Nazis, right? They're hanging out there, the data got out there. Everyone started pouring over it for OSINT, doing analysis of it, because Nazis are not the most sympathetic folks out there, right? No one's really sticking up for the Nazis saying, hey, you guys really shouldn't be doing that. So I jumped in on it too, why not? And so then I wrote this blog post of just super quick bulk extractor, stick it on it. Probably like 2 minutes later, I just had a list of all the selectors. So then when my work's like, hey, do you have the IP addresses from there? Do you have the phone numbers from there? Do you have, yep, here they are. Like I said, it may not be perfect, but it is a very, very good job, and it does it very, very quickly. And sometimes that's what we need depending on what we're doing. All these different data sets in all these different formats, you can try to take them and you're like, oh, I'm just going to insert those into a database. I'm just going to make a database, a different table for every breach, just start inserting records in there. You can, like you absolutely can. You're going to have a bad time. It's a pain in the ass, it is. Some of the data sets aren't normalized as much as you want them to be. Different things will just kind of change. You're sitting there doing all of a sudden like there's a new column that pops up. You're not sure where it came from. The best software engineer I know did this with a couple data sets into AWS, and she got it done. Like it kicked butt, and the lookups were super, super quick, but it was a pain in the butt to do. And so doing this across like hundreds and hundreds of data sets is a pain. Like I said, it can be done. You can do it. And if you're that good with the databases and you want to do it, nothing I give you in this talk is really going to help you, other than maybe where to find it or what we can do with it. But for those that don't want to go do that, right? For those that are like, I'm a little too lazy for that and I kind of don't want to go down that road, I got you, right? So once again, back to kind of the forensics roots. Years ago in a forensics class, I learned about a tool called Agent Ransack. And Agent Ransack is designed to let you search quickly, kind of search hard drives for information. They have and it's free. They have a professional version called File Locator Pro, and I hate bringing up anything that costs money. Every time I do a talk, I always try to limit myself to free things. But in this regard, File Locator Pro, I think it was 40 when I first got it. It's up to 60 right now. It has a lot of features that Agent Ransack doesn't. And the most important feature, the one that we need right here, is the feature of indexing, right? Indexing. Once again, it's kind of a forensics concept that really ironically isn't used much in forensics anymore. This is what indexing does. It lets us trade storage space and effort now in exchange for quicker searches in the future. What does that mean? Let's take a quick look at the math. So this is just one data set. I think this was one of the collection 2 chunks. 126 gigs of raw data. Searching that for a selector for like an email address is going to take about 50 minutes. That's not tenable. Right? Start to scale that out. Start to say like you have like, okay, I've got 4 or 5 terabytes of breach data, and now if I want to search an email or a phone number, it's going to take me like a day. That's not okay, because a lot of times when you get selectors, you get them in chunks. It's not good enough for most of us in what we do. So we can solve that by making an index. An index for that took about 2 days to make. Took up an extra 73 gigs in size, but then when we were done, our searches are taking 2 minutes instead of 50. And now we're down to a much, much more reasonable size. Now we can search terabytes of data in a matter of like half an hour or less for our selector. And now we have it, like I said, for lack of a better term, weaponized. It's in a much more useful format. I don't like the GUI that comes with File Locator Pro. I don't. The same way when you type something into Google, it starts to like auto-suggest and kind of make recommendations on what you want to search. It does that too, and that might be fine if I'm just searching like a directory of files, but across terabytes of data, it's slow, it bogs down, I just don't like it. And so what I do is they have a command line interface. And so what I did, I wrote this is ghetto Python code. It's like 70 just ugly lines of Python. But what it does is just a wrapper around that command line interface. And so now you can just give it a text file. So I posted it on GitHub. It's called Duck Hunt because I'm a 7-year-old. You can just give it a text file full of selectors, right? Like usernames from emails, phone numbers, whatever it is. Push go. It has 2 lists of indexes in there. One for I want to search every piece of data you have indexed. The other is I only want to search data sets that actually have phone numbers in them. So if your selectors are only phone numbers, don't waste time searching data sets that don't have phone numbers in them. And when it is done doing that, it spits out a nice, at least decent HTML report of all your results with the terms that are there bolded, highlighted. So to prove I'm 7, that is a copy of the report right there. Like I said, it's a very, very short Python file, but it's 55K in size, and it's because almost all of it is a base 64 of that JPEG that it inserts in the header because I'm 7. But like I said, if you want to go down this road, if you want to start using it, take that, modify it, whatever it is you want to do. But if you're going to search large number of selectors, I found it easier to just put them into a text file, push go do whatever it is I want to do, come back later and kind of look through the report to see the results. If you were going to go down that route, I would also highly suggest in my GitHub where I had there, I have a link to this blog post that I wrote a couple weeks ago. Check it out. There's a couple of idiosyncrasies with the way it does searches. And it's not deal breakers, like I still use it, but there's a few things that I wish I would have known when I started indexing and I started doing some of these searches. And so I just kind of tried to write up an article for, this is stuff that I wish I would have known when I started doing this. So if you're gonna do it, I would highly recommend you at least give that a quick scan. All right, this is the funnest part of the entire talk, right? We've talked about how to find it, talked about how we can make it in a more usable format, easier. Like I said, if you want to take the time to dump it into a DB, God bless you, but kind of a lazy way where you can just push go, come back 2 days later, and now it's more usable. Now we'll talk about the fun stuff, right? How can it actually help us? Because that's the thing, is like I had someone like 2 nights ago like, hey, what are you talking on? Like breach data, like how we can use it. It's like, what, to commit crimes? Like, you'll have to wait and see the talk, right? Maybe. The easiest sell of all, by a mile, pen testers. Pen testers, red teamers, offensive operations, by a mile, the easiest sell of this type of information. Trying to figure out usernames and their passwords to then use that to access systems, that's kind of a bread and butter technique to go through that. And spoiler alert, right, people tend to reuse passwords. Pretty much everyone does. There used to be a service that would try to cater to this called Pwned List, right? They haven't been around in a while, so you can see I actually had to go to a Wayback Machine to get a screenshot. But I remember the first time I ever saw a demo of this, it was just like jaw-dropping. I'm like, holy crap, that's crazy. And what it was is they had compiled a bunch of the breach data. You can see there like over 866 million account credentials harvested, all these different leaks, all those different passwords they've collected. And they would take this, it was very, very expensive, I remember that. But you could access it, and then if you're like, hey, I want to see any passwords you have for any Cisco accounts, right? Any Tesla accounts, whatever it is, then you could get the results. And I remember the first time I saw a demo, someone searched like Cisco, there was a ton of results. Someone searched FBI.gov, there was a ton of results of different like FBI.gov emails and the passwords. I'm like, holy crap, that's crazy, right? It was just a super, super expensive service. They got bought out, acquired. I think they're technically under someone under Allstate now. But also now what seemed crazy back then, I'm like, oh yeah, no, you can just totally do that yourself. You can do that yourself on just some old janky computer you have, and you stuff like an 8 terabyte hard drive in, right? And so now, I usually, when I'm teaching more technical classes, I usually use Tesla as for a lot of my examples, because they have a bug bounty program that's very, very easy to register with. And so there you can see, I looked through Tesla results, we found one right there, and I blurred out the who it actually belongs to, but Tesla.com, and their password was ViewSonic1 with a capital V. This is actually a brilliant password. Think about it. Everyone in here that's social engineering, what do you look for? You're looking for Post-it notes on monitors. This is meta. All right? They're not doing a Post-it note on the monitor as the password. It's actually the monitor brand name itself. Like, that's brilliant. It's effing brilliant. I wish I would have thought of that, right? I wish I would have thought of that. All right. How can it help me if we do threat, intel, or blue team? That is probably a majority of the people we have in here. We probably have more of that than we do anything else. There's a few different ways, right? Number one, fake accounts. Like I said, most of us in here are probably familiar with Have I Been Pwned. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but if I ask people who's in there, it's probably going to be a majority of this. Honestly, like, people that work in this industry may not think so, but no one is better at detecting fraud than financials. They just are, right? I remember one time I had my credit card ripped off, and like 20 minutes later they're calling me, and they're like, yeah, we're calling you up because do you have your credit card? I'm like, shit, no, I don't. They're like, yeah, someone tried to swipe and grab something from a red box and then try to buy a TV at Walmart, and you're like, that's almost passable. It's something that I would have tried to do, though, but they flagged it, they caught it instantly. God bless you. They look at a lot of different things to try to do that, right? Like I said, they do an amazing job. One of the things they look at is this. Think about this. If someone hires you and you're sitting there trying to basically come up with algorithms and trying to find a series of checks and balances to determine if this is a real person, everyone in here has a primary email they use, right? For most of us, it's probably a Gmail. If that Gmail address, if your primary email address isn't in Have I Been Pwned, are you real? Like, seriously, like, is that, seriously, it's kind of sad in this day and age to say that, but between some of these massive dumps that are out there, the lists that are on there, LinkedIn, you know, all of these different hacks, if your primary email is not in this breach data set, that is a point towards you not being real. And like I said, it's not the only one. I was actually looking someone up the other day that wasn't in there, like, wow, okay, and it looked like it was their real Gmail address. But that's definitely a point to the negative ledger. And this is one of those things that actually financials in different industries are utilizing this information like that. If you're in there, cool, it's a point towards you being a real person. If you're not, it's kind of a point in the negative column. Again, it's not definitive, but it's useful. Another way is this. Let's all get together now and let's start up a business. We'll call it ArlingtonWidgets.com, right? We'll go out and grab ArlingtonWidgets.com. We'll use that as our email. We all have Arlington.com, ArlingtonWidgets.com email addresses. We can go to Have I Been Pwned, prove that we own the rights to ArlingtonWidgets.com, and now it will give us a notification of any of our email addresses that appeared, a new breach that they find, and we're like, damn, that's useful, and it is. If now we kind of expand and we end up with like maybe 8 different email domains, well, now it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass, but we can still do it. But what happens if we run a service and we just let people sign up with their Gmail, with their Hotmail, with their Yahoo, whatever it is that they have? Right? Well, now it's kind of a pain. Now we can't do this anymore, right? Even if we could take a list of our users and upload it, our legal would never let us do that. And so if we're concerned with this type of thing, if we want to monitor it, we kind of really only have 2 things. We either pay someone else to do it for us, all right, we can just throw money at the problem, that usually fixes it, or we can kind of do this ourselves, do the methodology. And it doesn't have to be even a real-time lookup. I was working with an org a couple months ago. They had a sharp uptick in accounts taken over, compromised. It's like, just give me like a dozen of them. Just give me like a dozen of your accounts that you know have been popped. Cool. First one, I'm like, is their password this? They compute the hash. Yeah. Next one, password this. Yeah. All right, let's do one more to be sure. Is their password this? Yeah. All right. They're all coming from collection 1. Like everything I'm seeing is for collection 1, right? And so now then you could get with their legal and they can kind of make the decision, listen, if you have any other users that are in here, you may want to force them to reset. Or maybe at least compute the hash, see if that's the same password that y'all are storing, and then force them to reset. But at least now you can make an educated decision, is this attack you're seeing, right? What is the source that it's coming from? That's what threat intelligence is all about. And now you can kind of make an informed defense and kind of deal with this and know what you're dealing with in a more educated manner. All right, how can it help me? OSINT analysis. This is the big one, right? This is, like I said, we probably have more threat intel than we have anything else in the room, but OSINT is probably second place to it. There is a tried and true, for anyone that does OSINT in this room, there is a tried and true technique that has been usable for years, and it's this. Think about the identity resolution problem and how hard that is to solve. Now think about all the apps that we use on their phone, right? We use WhatsApp, we use Signal, we use all of these different apps. Remember back to when you first installed WhatsApp or whatever it is that you use for third-party texting. Did you have to sit there like a caveman or a barbarian and enter in all your contacts again to see who was using that? No. We just said, hey, go search my contacts for friends. Here's your 68 friends that are using WhatsApp or Signal, whatever it is, vaya con Dios, you know, go live your life. This is tough to scale, but that is a fantastic solution to the identity resolution problem. Because if you're threat intelligence, right, and like an executive gets a threat, you get a threat against something, you have a phone number, you're like, okay, cool, well, we paid a lot of money, so I have like LexisNexis, or I have access to all these databases, and you search it up, and what does it come back to? Verizon, DBA, prepaid Cellco. It's something someone spent 30 bucks for down at the Circle K, and you're not any further than you were 10 minutes ago. But if they took that number, and then they signed up for like a Snapchat, right, like a WhatsApp, like a Signal, something else. Now what you can do, and this is a tried and true OSINT technique, we take that number, we put it in as a contact of our Android phone or an emulator, we go to Snapchat, WhatsApp, whatever's popular in that country, say, hey, I'm new here, search my contacts for friends. Oh, here's your friend right here. Well, now we just took that phone number and turned that into a name, a username, a profile picture, a lot of times all that information. I teach OSINT a lot during the day for my day job, as you can tell. That is a tried and true technique that usually works. The whole concept of searching contacts for accounts, that's not going away because none of us want to sit there and put in all our contacts. But it's not as cool as it was before last September, because up until then, it worked for pretty much everything out there. But in September now, it really doesn't work for Facebook and Instagram anymore. All right, it doesn't. It's kind of a little different now. You kind of let it simmer, kind of brush up against their contacts, and maybe they'll float to the top. But it's not that definitive answer like we get for everything else. And I have no friends that work there, and even if I did, they're not going to tell you why they did it. But sometimes, even though they won't tell you why they did it, you sit there and you kind of put multiple things together. And what happened last September is some massive data sets got found online for Instagram and Facebook users. Like Facebook, to the tune of 264 million Facebook accounts had been enumerated. And it looked like someone was using probably like a weakness in the API on the way Facebook Messenger works, because at that point, that's what people were using to kind of search Facebook phone numbers. But whatever it is, like I said, I'm not saying this is why Facebook did it, just trying to judge what happened and what their reaction was. But all of a sudden, the search techniques like that don't work anymore. So it usually works, but it ain't working with Facebook or Instagram, unfortunately. And so once again, maybe it's breach data, right? Maybe breach data can help us. Because I've given this talk one time before. I gave it about 2 weeks ago at the SANS OSINT Summit. And someone putting on the summit said something after the fact that I honestly never even thought about. They said, yeah, before I had always just thought about breach data as emails and passwords. I didn't think about anything else. Like, oh no. For a lot of the data sets, that's what there is. But for a lot of the data sets, there's a lot more in there, including things like phone numbers, and that can help us solve the identity resolution problem. And so here is a heavily redacted screenshot. I believe this was the MGM data from looking at it. Or no, this might be the Zynga data, actually. And so you can start to see we have addresses, right? We have Gmail accounts. I've blurred out quite a bit of it, but we have phone numbers up there. All of this types of information. Even if we didn't have Facebook data, maybe we have other data that people like. Everyone uses Zynga to play Facebook games. It's very, very popular, very, very common. They had a big breach a couple months ago. That data set's out there and not that hard to find. My boss's cell phone is not going to show up in any system you got. But if you take that cell phone number and you run it through the Zynga breach data, there's his name, there's his Gmail address, and there's a lot of other information about him. And so once again, for people that do OSINT, for investigations, for threat intelligence, whatever it is you do it, that identity resolution problem, this can be a tremendous aid in helping us to figure it out. And speaking of Facebook, I had to show at least a little bit of Facebook data right there. Once again, I have heavily blurred this out, but we can see Connie. She was born in the 70s over there on the far right. Her phone number starts off with a 717. She was last on February 2nd, 2019, from whenever this breach data was taken. It was taken in early 2019. She has an AOL email account, so you know she's tech savvy. But here's millions and millions of Facebook records with email, with phone numbers and everything else. Once again, let me be very, very clear. I'm not happy these things got breached, right? I'm not happy about this in any way, shape, or form. But they're out there. And do we think our adversaries are using them? Like, hell yeah, our adversaries are using it, right? It's a tried and true technique. Like I said, it's pretty easy when you start getting accounts popped to go back and figure out, bless you, exactly what breaches that they're using. So, if you want to look things up, like I said, I'm not the morality police. Some people hate this stuff and say they would never use it. Cool. Some people are like, no, I'm going after really, really bad people. I'm trying to figure out this thing that I need to figure out. It's going to help me. I'm going to use it. Great. Like I said, there's no judgment. Combo lists, right? You will see this nomenclature a lot if you start playing out in this ecosystem and looking for things. And what a combo list is this, right? What's super, super useful is when you just have breach data set, right? Here's the MGM data, here's the Dropbox data, here's the LinkedIn data, the MyFitnessPal, whatever it is, it's a data set. You know where it came from. You can usually look at it and verify like, yep, nope, that's pretty real, right? The MGM data that just hit like a week and a half ago, when I did that example screenshot and I searched for example.com, I actually got a hit. I'm like, wait, what? It was the first record in the data set. And it was them putting in like the test data with an email address at example.com. All right, yeah, that looks legit. But some people don't care about using this for research. Some people, all they care about is just a straight up, I just want logins and emails, and I want the passwords. And so what they will do is they will make combo lists. They will take a bunch of different, like here's like 50 Bitcoin sites that I popped. I compiled all the user accounts and passwords, and now I'm just dumping it into a combo list. So for OSINT research, these are much, much less useful, right? We just don't have the provenance. Sometimes too, you can even tell they kind of mutate passwords. Like they use a password, they're like, that's really close to a password I've used, but not exactly, and it's because they're kind of mutating and trying to guess. And so they're not as useful for OSINT, but they still can have some use, right? So like I said, once again, a combo list is just going to be emails and passwords, can still be useful. A couple months ago, I was looking at some Telegram chats, had someone I believe was like a Russian threat actor in there. They had a fairly unique username. I took that username and I searched it and I actually got a hit from a combo list. I'm just going through the hits, and it was to that username at hotmail.com. And their password was a really nerdy Marvel comic book reference followed by a number. I'm like, that ain't the Russian threat actor, right? It's not using a hotmail.com with this nerdy Marvel reference as the password. I scroll down through the results some more. I find two .ru email addresses, same username, same damn dorky password. And I'm like, I stand corrected, you know? And now I was like, okay, now I'm not 100% definitive that that's the same person. But at least now I know that those three accounts, I believe that they're tied together, and I can start researching and trying to once again solve that identity resolution problem. So combo lists, not as handy as full dumps, but they can still have value. All right, and the last one as we go to wrap it up, the forensics practitioner, right, the DFIR. I could stand here all day and play the password card. Absolutely, I can play that card, right? When the other day, last week, I got asked by someone, I was in Austin last week, and I got asked by someone who was trying to crack a password from a cryptocurrency wallet. And they're like, yeah, no, it's just brutal. And man, anyone who cracks passwords in here, right, who has a rig at home and uses Hashcat, you know, some of those algorithms, you smile when you see them. Stupid, stupid easy. SHA-1, I love it. Some of those are stupid, stupid slow. All right, stupid, stupid slow, and actually brute force it or even run through a giant dictionary, it's gonna take a long time. It really is. Probably I think the slowest thing in Hashcat right now is probably iTunes backup, right, greater than 10. You get something that's going through millions and millions of hashes. For a slow algorithm, it's going through like 13 hashes. a second for those iTunes backups. A couple months ago, I got in a hard drive that had 2 iTunes backups on there, one for an iPad, one for an iPhone. And I'm like, all right, let me try a 4-digit, they were both encrypted, so I couldn't parse either one of them out. I'm like, let me try a 4-digit PIN, try it on the phone, nothing. Try it on the iPad, nothing. All right, let me try 6-character, phone, nothing. iPad, boom, I'm in. Sweet. First thing I do when I open up that iPad is I start grabbing a list of all the passwords in it, right? What passwords have they used to log into Wi-Fi? What passwords have they used to log into websites? I grab all the passwords from that iPad, I take that, make a dictionary, and now run that dictionary against the iPhone. It was slow, but I was still on that iPhone like 10 minutes. And so cracking that password, it never would have happened. But because people reuse passwords, now we can take that and we can have some success. And so once again, we was talking about the crypto wallet, I'm like, just any other password you can grab of them, right? Anything from like an online service through this, anything else you can get on that hard drive, any RAM dumps, whatever you have, but try to take some of their passwords that they use, because there's a really, really good chance that is a variant of that, right? And then we start mutating it with some of our hashcat rules, whatever it is you want to do. Like I said, I could sit here and play the password card all damn day long. I'm not going to play it. I'm going to play a different card. I'm going to play the practice card, right? And for the 3 of you in this room that are sports fans and get this joke, thank you. Thank you very much. Allen Iverson. What do I mean by practice? Let's go take a look one more time at the screenshot from that distributed denial of secret Sherwood dump of the bank in the Caymans where supposedly all these shady Russians were doing money laundering. And we see, like I said, domain controllers, exchange servers, file servers, SQL databases. You see forensics companies and you see e-discoveries, all the e-discovery companies all the time when they're testing their tools, when they're doing case studies and publishing on these events. What are they using, right? Enron emails, right? Panama Papers. Panama Papers, super, super common one. That's breach data. Like, no one has a problem with it because it's written off as just it was shady people doing shady things, right? Once again, like, no one's really sticking up for the Nazis and saying you probably shouldn't be exposing that data. And so people really don't have a problem with it when it's just kind of like write it off as, like I said, shady people doing shady things. But if you're a forensics person working on forensics tools, or you're trying to practice, you're trying to figure things out, honestly, sometimes this is, like I said, I'm not the morality police. This is where, to me, the morality is the grayest that it is. Because honestly, where else are you going to get an Exchange server to practice parsing? To start doing some of this style of work. Well, they're sitting right there on the internet. And if you're not going to do anything, when I start asking people about breach data, it's usually pretty unanimous. It's like, yeah, nope, no problem with it. You're not doing anything good. It's out there. You're not going and grabbing it yourself. So you're just doing it to try to protect your industry or do your job. Cool, knock yourself out. This is the one that makes people kind of wince a little bit. Right, because yeah, it's out there, you're not doing anything bad with it necessarily, but still there is some very, very sensitive data on there, right? And by very sensitive data, you start looking at things like this. When you have a folder called employee termination or salary changes, right? And you just kind of like wince, like, ugh. Yeah, you can kind of use it to practice. You can figure some of that things out and check it out. But once again, it kind of comes back home to the fact that this was a breach data set. And there's some things in there that if you work for that organization, you really, really probably wished weren't out there. It really, really doesn't. So I wanted to end down at about 10:45. It is now 10:46, about perfect timing. If you want a copy of this presentation, it's right there. I put it up last night. It is the latest updated version. My Twitter is there in the bottom right. If you want to follow me on Twitter, feel free. I'm going to be honest with you. It's about 80% tech, about 15% alcohol, and about 5% baseball with that guy right there. So he's like the only baseball fan I know, so we just go at it quite a bit. So I probably got time for like one question if anyone wants one. And other than that, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And have a great afternoon. Hope you have a good day. Thank you. Thank you. I should also say, too, thank you to BSides NoVA. I've been to, I think, every one of these. I actually moved to DC like a week before the first one, and somehow was able to get in on their generosity of getting me a ticket. And so it's really kind of an honor to speak here. So they always do a great job. It always ends up being probably my favorite conference of the year. So thank you for having me. If you have any questions, like I said, come hunt me down. I'm really, really tough to miss, man. I'm probably like the next to tallest dude here. So thank you. Thank you.